Hello students, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can use quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. So please stay on to the end of the video. Right, let's look at this question here. You asked to solve the equation x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals to 0. Recall that to solve the equation is to find the values of x that satisfy the equation. What does it mean? If I were to give you a linear equation, x plus 3 equals to 0, right, then the solutions will be x equals to negative 3. Because when you substitute x to be negative 3 here, negative 3 plus 3 give you 0, which is the value you have on the right hand side. So x equals to negative 3 satisfy this given linear equation. Right, so we're going to extend this knowledge to solving quadratic equation. And so far, you have only learned the following method to solve quadratic equation. Right, some people call this the cross method. Right, so your two linear factors will be x minus 3 and x minus 1. So to solve it, we apply the AB product rule, which we let x minus 3 equals to 0, where we get x equals to 3, or we let x minus 1 equals to 0, we get x equals to 1. So the two solutions here are x equals to 3 or x equals to 1. Right, so the above method that we have applied to solve the quadratic equations has a limitation. As if you were to recall, most of the times the values of x are rational numbers. Rational means fractions. Like for example, it can be x equals to 2/3. It can be an integer, x equals to negative 1. Right, but what happens if the values, the solutions are not exact and has many decimal places, such as your answer could be x equals to 2.614, so on and so forth, or x equals to square root 2, something like that, then you will see that we cannot apply the earlier method anymore. So therefore, we need to learn a new method. And this method we're going to learn is to use the quadratic formula to solve the quadratic equations. Alright, so what is quadratic formula? What is the quadratic formula? So supposing the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, where a is not equals to 0, because if a is equals to 0, then you end up getting this guy here. If a is equals to 0, 0 times x squared will give you 0. So you will have 0 plus bx plus c equals to 0, which is just bx plus c equals to 0. And you end up getting a linear equation, which is no longer quadratic. Therefore, there is this conditions here that we need to take note that a cannot be equals to 0. Right, so what is one example of this quadratic equation? A cannot be 0, so it can be any real number, so I can let it be 3x squared. Likewise, for the constant b and c, it can be any real numbers, so it can be like 4x minus 7. So this is one example of a quadratic equation. Right, so to find the solutions, the formula goes in this way. Right, because we're dealing with a quadratic curve, basically there are two solutions that is possible, right? So it can be x equals to negative b plus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a, or it can be x equals to negative b minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So when you combine both of these, you end up getting a plus and a minus in the middle here. Right. So this quadratic formula is actually derived from completing the square method. And if you're interested, I have a video to show you how you can actually use completing the square to derive the quadratic formula. And the link is as follows. But this is not compulsory to go and look at it, all right, because what's more important here is to learn how to apply the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. All right, let's try to do a question, which is to solve x squared minus 10x plus 14 equals to 0. Now, the first term is very important. And what is it? You have to ensure that the equation given to you is arranged properly. So how should it be arranged? Your x squared term must come first, followed by your x term. All right, your x squared term must come first, followed by your x term, and followed by a constant. C is a constant, it's just a number. It's a number without any x squared or x term there. And we are very lucky because the first equation that we'll be dealing with has been arranged properly for us already. So what do we do next? Yes, you just compare it with ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Why do you want to compare it? Because we need to write down the values of a and the values of b and the values of c. So a, it's a number in front of the x squared term. Okay, so x squared means 1x squared. Okay, x squared means 1x squared. So the number in front of x squared is 1, which is the values we're going to substitute as a in the quadratic formula. And, oh my goodness, this one came out too early, just ignore it. Then we need to find the values of b. B is the number in front of x. It's actually the coefficients. Okay, learn this new word. The number in front of x is called the coefficient, which is the values for b. So if you compare with the equation, it's negative 10. Be very careful and make sure that you take the sign, okay, in front of a number. Take it along. So it's negative 10. It is not 10, but negative 10. And then the values of c here will be just 14. Okay, positive 14. You just write it as 14. All right, so with all this value, what we're going to do is write down the formula. Now, I'm sorry, students, you really have to make an effort to memorize this formula, okay? This formula will not be given to you in the formula sheet, so you have to memorize it. So you can go to the YouTube. There are many good videos that help you to memorize it by singing it out. You can sing it to the tune of row, row, row the boat. I don't know how you do that. Like negative b plus and minus square root, something like that. Okay, you can rap it out. You can sing it out, right? Just to memorize the formula. Okay, and then the next thing is that once you memorize the formula, we can now do the substitution. So you just substitute 10 to be negative, substitute the values of b to be negative 10. So be careful. Why do I say be careful? Because negative 10 is negative 10. So we need a bracket here. Okay, when you're dealing with negative, you just make sure you bracket it. Okay, and then also here bracket it. Right, also basically just bracket. Okay, and then below also bracket. All right, now so we mentioned earlier on this is a quadratic equation, hence you should have two values of x, two solutions. So we're going to split this guy, okay, one to be positive and one negative. Okay, how do I get 44? Not to worry. To get 44, basically you just use your calculator to evaluate this guy. Okay, and when you use your calculator, please be careful, as in you really have to put a bracket there. Bracket first, followed by negative 10, followed by close bracket squared minus 4 bracket 1 close bracket open up 14 close bracket. Okay, you have to key in properly. Okay, this bracket must be there. Key in properly, then you will get 44. All right, so one positive answer, which is positive here, one positive answer, which is what we have here, and then again use your calculator to work it out. Put it to 3 significant figure. Okay, if the questions did not ask you for the degree of accuracy, like never tell you put to 2 decimal places or 4 significant figure, whatever, then your final answer, it should be 3 significant figure. Okay, so the other answer will be 10 minus square root 44 over 2. And again, use your calculator to work this out. You should get 1.68. Okay, so can you see now that the answers you get are not exact? But of course, sometimes the answer you get could be exact also, doesn't matter. This is just a formula to help you to find the solutions. So whether it's exact or not exact, you just go ahead and use the formula. Okay? All right, let's look at another question. You're given 3x squared plus 2x minus 7 equals to 0. Again, let's check if it's arranged properly. The x squared term must come first. And yes, our x squared terms come first, followed by your x term, yes, followed by a constant, and the right hand side, you must make sure it's a big fat 0. Okay, you must make sure the right hand side is a 0. Right, so what's the next thing we do? We compare it with ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. All right, then what's the next thing? Yes, the next thing is we have to write down the values for a, b, and c so that we can substitute it into our quadratic formula, right? So I highlighted it for you. A is equals to 3, b is equals to 2, and c is equals to negative 7. Okay, negative 7. Make sure your negative is there. All right, and then the next thing is, right, I hope that you have watched some video to remember your quadratic formula. Write down your quadratic formula. Okay, substitute in the values for b, which is 2. Values for a is 3. Values for c is negative 7. All right, so far okay, so far very good. So what's the next thing we do? Yes, you use a calculator to evaluate this guy, which comes up to be 88. So it can be, and then use a calculator again to further evaluate the answer to get 1.23. You can use, to evaluate this guy here, you use this function in your calculator, a fraction, the fraction one. Okay, right. And then you can have two answers. Remember, we say it's a quadratic equation, so it can be positive or negative 2 minus square root 88 over 6. And then again, use a calculator and you should get negative 1.90 express the 3 significant figures. So far okay? Right, let's go on. Okay, so far the questions we have done are relatively easy. They have been arranged properly for us, as in like ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. What happens if you have a question like this, where your right hand side is not equal to 0 and it's not arranged properly for you? So what do we need to do? Yes, we need to do some rearrangement. Okay, we need to do some rearrangement on a cell. Just to give you an example, for example, the furnitures in your bedrooms is not arranged according to your mom's liking, and the mom is angry about it. So what do you need to do? You have to rearrange it, right? So likewise here, we need to rearrange this one. So to make your right hand side become 0, I need to add 2x on both sides. Because negative 2x, this guy here, negative 2x plus 2x equals 0. So if I add it on the right hand side, I must add it also on the left hand side. So let's see what happened. All right. And if you look at it again carefully, your x squared term is the first term. That's very good. But your second term has to be the x term, right? Then the last term is constant. So can you see that these two terms, yes, these two terms are not in order. All right, so we need to rearrange it. That means we need to put positive 2x first, and then the negative 5 behind. And let's check. Yes, finally it's correct really. We have the x squared term first, followed by a x term, followed by a constant. Okay, so basically it's just a rearrangement. And then the next thing is that we can compare all our ABC. So A is the number in front of x squared. So the number in front of x squared here is -3. And the number in front of x is 2. And C is a constant, which is -5. And what's the next thing we do? Yes, your beautiful quadratic formula. Write it down. Okay, so actually this is not difficult. The difficult part is how to find a way to memorize the quadratic formula. Right, so we substitute your B to be 2. Okay, I would strongly advise you to bracket this one. You see, I also forgot. Bracket it. It's better to bracket it. Okay. Then the next thing is use your calculator to work out this chunk of thing, which turned out to be 64. So it can be positive here. And then use your calculator again to work out the answer. Oh, sorry, it can be negative. Okay, can be negative here. Then use your calculator to work out your first one. Oh, this is not approximately, it's actually exactly equals to 1. So I'm sorry, change it because it's the exact number. So you should put equal. Right, so the first answer is 1. And then the second answer is -5/3. Okay, so that's recap. If the question given to you is not in order, you need to rearrange it yourself. All right, so let's do a recap. So we have done something, we have done some relatively easy questions where the equations are being arranged properly for you, as in the x squared term come first, followed by the x, followed by the constant. And the last question, not last question, sorry, question number 3, the one that we did earlier, is such that you have to make some rearrangement such that the right hand side is equals to 0. Okay. Now we're going to do a rather challenging question. In this case here, there are 2 challenges here. What are they? First challenge, your right hand side is not equal to 0. Second challenge, okay, there's no x squared term there, and there's no x term. There's only 2 linear factors. So what do we need to do? You see bracket, right? When you see bracket, what do you do? How do you simplify? When you have bracket and bracket, how do you go ahead, simplify it? Yes, you expand it. You're right, you expand it. I hear you, I can hear you. Yes, you expand it. So how do we expand it? Yes, I hear you again. We use the distributive law to expand it. Okay, so we take x, multiply into, so there are 2 linear factors here. Okay, the one in purple and the one in red. So look at the purple first. The first term in your purple rectangle is x. So take x, distribute to the red guy. Then go back, which is what you have here. Then go back to the purple guy, the second term, -1. -1 distribute into the red guy again. So this is what we get. And then let's do the expansion. All right, so where do I get this negative here? That is when I take negative multiply with positive. Negative multiply with positive gives you negative. Right, so we're going to rearrange it, put everything on the left hand side. Yes, you grouped, put everything, oh yes, here. This one here, this is 3x. So minus 2x will give you 1x. 1x is just x. And then this guy here, 3, you want to bring it to the other side. So you have to subtract -3 on both sides. That's how I end up with this. Okay, Then simplify further. Right, this is what I get. Okay, why do I put a 1 in front of the x? Because I need to write down the coefficients of x, the number in front of x. This is just to remind you lah. X means 1x. So when you compare it with the ax squared plus bx equals plus c equals to 0, you know your b is 1, your a is 2, your b is 1, your c is negative 6. Alright, so that is the purpose of me putting a 1 in front of the x. Alright, then what's the next thing you need to do? So we have done all the difficult things already. Next thing is to write down the quadratic formula. And when I'm doing this video, it's raining. It's raining outside, very heavy rain. Just now I just saw the, the dark clouds floating past me. Right. So write down the quadratic formula. And then what's the next thing? Substitute in the values for B, A, and C. Oh, very good. This time I remember to put a bracket here. Okay. And then what's the next thing we do? Yes, use your calculator to work out this value, which is 49. So it can be positive, negative 1 plus square root 49 over 4, or it can be negative 1 minus square root 49 over 4. Then use calculator again. You will get first answer as 3 over 2 exact value. Second answer is also exact negative 2. Alright, so this is how we solve this equation. Okay, so students, we have gone through 4 examples on how we can apply the quadratic formula to solve the quadratic equation. So the next thing is that we need to practice. We need to practice the skills that we have just learned. Otherwise, you will not remember. Right, so what I have done just now is to teach you how to fish. So now you have to do the fishing yourself. So please do assignment 2.3 for your HBL homework submission. Please don't give up. Okay, try. Just do your best. Try and try.